The talk this evening is titled, Get Your Own Authority. This is something that Kobuchino Roshi, Kobuchino Otogawa Roshi, who they have this photograph is on the altar. Today is his 15th parinirvana, or 15 years and anniversary of his passing. You read a little bit of his biography? Okay, good. So this is just a way that we pay respect, show gratitude, and acknowledge his authority. I can tell who watches South Park and who doesn't. So, get your own authority. So first, what we would have to do, just simply put, we would have to really look very closely at what our presumptions, preconceptions, opinions, ideas, explanations, definitions of authority actually are. You should actually look at what is authority. Just somebody who runs things, somebody who is the boss. In some organizations, the authority is pretty obvious, like the military. There's no question who the authority is. If you have 2 stripes and they have 3, case closed. And it's a pretty powerful way to get something to run. The downside of having a central authority is that central authority does not have access to the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, senses of everyone that he or she is in authority over. They only have their own, usually if their mind's not trained, which it's rare to find anybody who's trained their mind, other than learning stuff and passing tests. So the example I sometimes use, there's millions apparently of, I've never counted them, so I don't know for sure, but I've been told there are millions of glomeruli in the kidneys that cleanse the blood. And I don't think that one of those glomeruli is in charge of the other ones. There isn't one with a little captain's hat on. So interesting how biology works. It's like someone said, I watched a video on driverless cars recently on YouTube, and the person who was giving the talk on that said that, you know, we've been in the human body's been in the transportation business for billions of years, and transporting the blood, the waste products back and forth without anybody in charge. When they say that, when he says that, when we reflect on that, we can say, it doesn't seem to be, because our thinking process, we're not really in charge of that stuff. And I often say, I'm saying now, if you were put in charge of all the things that are happening in your body, you'd be dead within a few minutes, because you wouldn't know how to manage all that, how to handle all that information. So as a meditator, if in fact you practice meditation regularly, which I know some of you do, meditation is about awareness. It is not about who's in charge, who's in control, or getting control for that matter. It is about awareness, about seeing as carefully, as closely as we can, what is actually happening? What is actually going on? So that when you get in trouble 3 weeks from now, when you suddenly find yourself in a desperate straits about a relationship, a job, an accident, or some difficulties with your body or with other people's bodies or minds or situations, we could go on and on, that we bring our awareness to that rather than our ideas, our opinions, and our judgments, our preconceptions about it. Trying to make, well, I got all the maps here, one of these has got to fit. You know what it's like to be in a situation where you don't know what to do. Quite often we panic because of fear. because of losing control. And what is the fear of losing control? What has been misunderstood? What is the presumption there? That you have control in the first place. You do not have control. I'm older than anyone in this room. I've been looking at this my whole life. And I'm telling you. And it's not my opinion. See how I let myself off the hook there. But I would also say, see for yourself, find out for yourself, train your mind, sit down, come in here, come somewhere, go into your bedroom, go into your bathroom and close the door. If your family comes and says, what's going on in there? Say, I got a big project going on in here. And usually that'll send them on their way. They'll say, oh, okay, I'll just check in, make sure you're all right. And then they think you're in there with your big project, and actually you're sitting down on the floor facing the wall. You're training your mind because you can't get any privacy anyplace else. I highly recommend that. Train your mind. Find out who you are. If you don't do anything else for your life, you don't have to become a Buddhist. Forget everything I've said, but don't forget that one. Train your mind so that the mind you get up with every morning is more and more and more clear about what in the hell this is. Look out, look at your neighbors, look at your friends, your relatives, look on CNN, look anywhere, and you see complete confusion masquerading as sanity, truth, the American way. You remember that, don't you? Yeah, that was from Superman. It was interesting when I say get your own authority, I'm saying look and see what authority is, and you'll see that really there isn't any authority. But that's the discovery that you have to make. In order for you to understand what this is and how your whole life is running and how this works, there isn't any authority. You have to see that there isn't any authority for you to get your own authority, and the authority that you get is aware. If you're aware, then you don't need authority. You'll know because you're so present. Someone else who's not that way, they're not going to see your presence. They're not going to see that you're just here. Because, why aren't they? Because they're not here. They're in their minds about this, about that. They like this, they don't like that. What if they say that again? I'm going to say this. I hope this doesn't happen. I hope my car's still in the parking lot. I hope I still have my job. I hope my relationship isn't going to come apart. I hope I can solve this drug problem. Yak. I'm not saying that you aren't sincere on top of it or trying to solve the problem, but your way of solving the problem is through what? The thinking process. It does not work. How's that going for you? You can't think your way out of this situation or even into it. We just get more and more crazy, and the next thing you know, we're in front of a therapist who's also nuts. Present company accepted, of course. These therapists. I mean, is also operating out of their confusion that's unexamined or they're having difficulty with. Now, if they have made a little, shall we say, progress with a lowercase p, then they at least might be aware enough to know that they should not meddle with your life. And that's called, what's that called? Respect. It's called respect. You actually respect the other person's intelligence. Even if they're having difficulty spinning in circles, you respect them because you're completely clear because you've trained your mind. You're completely clear that you have to do this yourself. I cannot sit up here as a Buddhist monk and enlighten you just by saying stuff. What I can do is I can help you see that you're going to need to awaken yourself. Or not. Go ahead and keep spinning in circles. I know it looks like a straight line. It looks like a straight line to you or to other people. Unless you're clear, unless you're awake, then everybody looks like they're spinning in circles. So get your own authority by seeing what the whole idea of authority actually is and where that applies. I'm not saying that someone doesn't decide to do this or do that. I'm not saying there aren't decisions made, but they're made quite often, if they're made without really considering, as has been called, a big picture, really big picture. I often say, to help people fundamentally who are still training their mind, one of my recommendations, I'm big on giving advice, don't do anything unless you have to. Don't do anything. If you don't have to do it, don't do it. Why gamble on anything? Well, I don't have to do that. I'm not gonna. Or, well, don't I have to get a job? I don't know. Can you get somebody to feed you? That's a rhetorical question. So don't do anything unless you have to. So this way you don't spend a lot of your valuable time as a living being going down a trajectory where all you're doing is making excuses for why this isn't working. Once you start down any kind of road, all you're going to see is no U-turn, no U-turn, no U-turn. We keep going and going and going. We don't want to give up hope instead of seeing this is not going to work. Reverse. Back up. You can back up a long way if you have a rear view mirror. Nothing wrong with backing up. So don't do anything unless you have to. And then if you have to do something, then do it with as much awareness as you can rather than a lot of thinking and analysis around it, whatever it may be. So I was watching, looking at YouTube on the driverless cars that are coming along, and I even posted I shared a link with who was it, the president of Mercedes, had a big long list of things like don't become a lawyer, because in 20 years there won't be any, because artificial intelligence can outdo anything a lawyer can do. You just feed it into the machine and it'll tell you what to do with 90% accuracy rather than 70%. Just one of the examples. And one of the things they talked about there were the driverless cars. And the video showed New York and showed how the driverless cars, because they wouldn't have to have stoplights, because they're not separate, so they all know about each other. It isn't like the authority that sits back and doesn't really know what's going on with anybody, so starts bossing people around based on what? Preconceptions. This is how preconception looks. It's like mental blindness. As soon as you look at anything, it's your life, so I'm not accusing you of anything, but take any situation and see if you can see what it actually is without what you think it is. Big difference between what's actually happening and what you think is happening. What you think is happening is a preconception or a projection. Especially if there's emotion involved, then you actually project onto the other, and then you deal with what? The projection instead of the actual situation. Because if you see the actual situation, you probably won't do much, and you'll certainly not hook up your vocal cords to it. Most things are operating just like they need to operate without your meddling. And that goes for yourself. Don't meddle with your own situation. Look in the mirror. How much say-so did you have about what you see in the mirror? Not much. So slow down. Use the meditation practice as a way of sitting down. Just make friends with yourself. Work with the most difficult problems first, which are probably your own confusion, your own aggression, your own craving, your own grasping, your own spinning. Sit down and watch what? Watch the spinning. I don't recommend people follow their breath, count their breaths, or do some kind of training that gives them more stability. Stability is a misunderstanding of the nature of the mind. That's something ego wants. Anything you get, you will lose. The very nature of conditioned reality or relative truth means that whatever shows up is going down. It might be 50 years, 100 years, might be after you're gone, but anything that occurs will change into something else. It's called impermanence, and it is a basic teaching of Buddhism, one of the 3 marks of existence. So the interesting thing about this video on YouTube is they had a diagram, and it kind of extended itself out. You can probably find it if you go into YouTube and look around there a little bit. But it showed how, it eventually showed, after it got everything laid out and showed where everything was going, then it showed walkways that where human beings did no longer cross the streets, and they always walk over the streets. So all the cars kept going, and none of them stopped. And it showed the cars, because the cars are not fundamentally separate from each other anymore, because they're driverless. The cars never run into each other because they know about each other intimately. It's kind of what happens in your kidneys, or what happens in your bloodstream. That kind of transportation has been going on for a long time. The blood, I can't remember all of the examples, but it talked about all the ways that the blood flow in the body is very much like traffic, that is extremely well governed, but not by authority, by what? Interdependence. The basic teaching of Buddhism is that of dependent origination. 2,500 years ago, a man, Gautama, the Buddha, awoke to that truth. He saw that nothing is separate from anything else. It is dependently arisen. Just anything that is arising over here that looks like a separate thing is dependent on everything else for its apparent singularity. And so, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying basically, learn, train your mind, be a using that same image. Of course, it's incomplete. It's inaccurate fundamentally, but it's a metaphor for the same thing. I'm saying, be a driverless human. Be a human being without an authority. It's possible. It's very possible. You can actually function out of your awareness with and have the thinking process be just something that comes up if you need to ask your wife what your blood sugar is. What's my blood sugar? Should I shoot up, or should I eat that muffin or not? And of course, I'm being silly, but what I'm saying is that the thought process is important, but it doesn't have, it tends to get a really high ranking, and it tends to get promoted up to Major General of the body complex because of what? Fear. Fear of losing control, fear of showing up wrong, fear of making a mistake, fear of being humiliated, fear, all kinds of, you could say, imaginary fears, and those are all based on a belief, a grasping, a clinging to an idea that is complete bullshit. And I'm telling you right now that it is. And I'm not asking you to believe it. Walk out of here and forget it. I don't mind, because I only have to do my job. I don't have to do yours. And what my job is to see what I see and tell you about it. If you walk in this room, if nobody comes in the room, I'd probably leave myself. And that is in a separate self. There is no separate self. I'm not saying there isn't nerve endings and eyes, nose, smell, hearing, seeing, feeling, even thinking. I'm not saying that's not going on, but it doesn't belong to anyone. There's no person behind any of that. But we think there is. And we also think that's happening with everyone else and everything else. We think everything else is separate from us. And there's some people who are right and some people who are wrong, some people who are friends, some people who are enemies. And conditioned arising, or the nature of this physical realm, perpetuates that, because it's always saying separation, separation, separation. And the reason it says separation, because it's so very expressive. But it's very, very hierarchical in its structure. What am I saying? I'm saying there's a natural kind of hierarchy that my first teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, the Dorje Dradal of Mukpo, talked about, called natural hierarchy. The example I like to use is you'll never see the leaves of a tree underground and the roots in the air. It just doesn't happen. Oh yeah? In the rainforest and the Amazon, there is a tree like that. I just lied. You believe it. Notice that? You believe that? Don't believe anything. Don't disbelieve anything. Don't believe anything. Don't believe anything, and don't disbelieve it. Don't do anything with it. Anything that comes up, it's just that. Anything extra is the way confusion develops, and this is the way you slowly, all of us, slowly put our head back in the ground and try to ignore everything that we can't, control. But you don't have any control in the first place. Yes, we have a little bit. I can say, oh, do I want coffee? No, I think I'll have water. Water's better for me. And it's clear, so that must mean that's a good sign. No, wait a minute. There's nothing in it, so I really need to drink coffee because it's warm, and I'm kind of cold. No, I'm not really cold. I just made a terrible mistake. I should have drinking water. Oh no. Who can I blame for that? Notice how we do that? I'm just making a fool of myself, but I was already a fool. So what do I mean by that? I'm already a fool. There's already nobody here. I'm a fool for grasping, rejecting, accepting, believing, doing anything with anything. It's called a spiritual path. And it is a spiritual path that is not about believing in this, rejecting that, or chasing this down and ignoring something else. It's about reality. As you see, you're actually it. It's you. You have to do it. Not something to be believed or disbelieved or ignored. So when I say be a driverless person, human, I'm just saying, see if you can function without adding things on to things. Just function in terms of texture, color, space, smell. And watch how people move. Watch how you move. When you talk, and if you use your hands like I've been doing, watch that. You don't have to stop it or correct it. Watch how you are when you talk to someone. Watch what happens in your mind when you're talking to a clerk, say at Walgreens or something, and they act this way or that way or some other way. And watch how your mind changes relative to what they're saying or doing. It's the area where the self-centeredness and the thoughts or the belief about a self, there's a little bit of gap there, but you have to sit on the cushion a lot and train the mind to see clearly so that awareness will tag along with you when you go into your everyday situation. Just a way of talking about it. So if you actually got your own authority, you would see no one's in charge. But that wouldn't even be a statement. It would be a perception, but you would know that the expression of saying no one's in charge wouldn't be particularly accurate either, because you know, even before you say that, there really isn't anyone to be in charge. And there's also, it's like there's no position on that. If you understand this, you will never, in the old-fashioned way, in the old way, you'll never make this kind of decision again. Or this kind. Let's see, water or coffee? Well, coffee, water's better for me, and I haven't had much water today. Maybe I'll have an apple. No, I can't. That's Coben's apple. Darn. Maybe later I can eat it. You know, the mind is just running all around. But the mind that is function out of no separation and really seeing that may look to others like just an ordinary dude running around and bumping into stuff like everybody else is. But not necessarily so. That person who sees this clearly may be functioning in such a way that they don't create problems for themselves or problems for others at all. And even the negativity that may arise in their own mind on occasion is completely welcome to come and go. I'm not saying they bring it in and become some kind of martyr. I'm this wonderful person and I just have to suffer this. All that horse manure. but actually allowing things to come and go. When I say allowing, I'm saying don't object, don't agree, don't look away. Don't object to it, don't object, don't agree with it, don't shut down on it. Those are the three. In Buddhism, those are called the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. Those are the three ways in which you avoid reality and opt for a crazy mind. You actually buy into this insanity called a self. It's insane, and the whole world is doing it. It's rare to even hear these kinds of words. If you hear it somewhere else, probably pretty unusual. It's not that it's not there, it's just that it's not frequent. So what's the basic message about authority? Basic message is see what authority is. See if what your relationship is to authority. See if there's a way in which you project onto others that they shouldn't be telling you what to do, or you project onto others that they're not seeing your authority. Like I'm the abbot here at this monastery. I call myself abbot. Call myself anything I want to. Does that mean I'm in charge here? Or does it mean that I just do what the head monk tells me? But in this kind of a context, that comes up quite strongly. But what's the difference is because the difference is that everyone here is also working on their mind. They're training their mind to try to see what is true. So I quite often, if I'm giving other people the benefit of the doubt, it kind of works both ways. Then they tend to give me the benefit of the doubt. When I say benefit of the doubt, I'm not saying you believe someone's right or you think they're wrong or right. You don't, just space. Actually allow some space for things to occur before we jump to a conclusion about it. This is how you make friends with yourself. Because if you have not made friends with this, my friends, my enemies, if you've not made friends with this, you will very, almost imperceptibly take this unseen, unwitnessed anger, aggression, and project it onto others, and then fight with that and think that it's out there. It's happening everywhere, all the time. It's all over the world. You watch MSNBC for 20 minutes. Even people who are pretty reasonable are still caught in a circularity called me and my ideas and how I'm right. I'd like some questions if you have them. Sokuzan.
We set up a relative authority as part of the forms to help us. How do we relate to that type of relative authority while still trying to get our own authority or see that there is no authority?
Just follow the form. Don't if you have the way I teach is I always include everybody. I don't just set up a bunch of forms and leave the room. I might do that, but I generally have a say-so about the forms. This is the way we're going to do this. I don't check in with Soto Shu in Japan. I just spent 30 years following forms someone else set up. Now I get to do it. So now we set up forms, and the forms are like the chanting the sutras, like we did this evening, are meant to be forms that you have to practice that a lot before you'll see what it's about. If you're brand new to this, you would come in and think, hey, what's that about? Why? Everything's in a foreign language. I don't understand. And I would like to say, you wouldn't understand it if it were in English. Of course, this evening's sutra was in English. How'd that go? Did you understand it? So it's not about a linear, logical kind of understanding. The Heart Sutra, as a matter of fact, if you contemplate the Heart Sutra and study it, you will blow a gasket, because it's extremely challenging to the self-centeredness of the ego mind that wants things to be true and not true, and doesn't like gray areas. Of course, the Heart Sutra is not a gray area, but to ego it may seem that way. So with your question, I would say follow the form, especially when the form is abrasive or difficult. That's just why it seems to be necessary to have a teacher. I couldn't have done this without a teacher. I'm way too cranky, independent, self-centered, and full of myself. Of course, not now. Actually, it hasn't changed a bit. Not a bit. Still just as terrible as I ever was, yes.
A question from Karen in New Zealand.
Oh, all that way?
She says, or asks, authoritative people have a way of sucking all listening into their vortex and talking over others. How best to be with this?
Leave the room. Or else, the other thing, I mean, you don't have to stay there, but I would not interact on a level of trying to explain to them how they should be more accommodating or they should listen. Just, I'm not saying leave the room to, abandon them or to be have some kind of hidden aggression going on. But you don't have to subject yourself. The best way to deal with that, Karen, is to train your mind. Sit down and see the way what you see out there you just described is actually happening in your own mind. It's not happening out there. Sorry. Actually, not sorry. It's not the negativity that you feel, that you think is out there, is not out there. It's you're the one who is having the negativity. I'm not saying there aren't triggers for it out there, but you have to see what that is. You have to actually see that you're the one who feels the negativity. And of course, there are obvious triggers that seem like way more than triggers. If somebody's pointing a gun at you, it's more than just a trigger. But you need to look at the trigger quality of things so that you can get an idea how awareness works relative to belief in a self, belief in grasping at an other as the enemy or as the person who's wrong. So yeah, there's all kinds of confusion out there. Train your mind so that you first make friends with this, so that you really can be compassionate with your own negativity and see there's no way you're going to get rid of your own negativity. So if you can really be compassionate with this, then when you step out into the world, because you've had your basic training right here in your own gut, in your own heart, in your own mind, you're able to go out and be kind to others who are terribly, terribly upset and are suffering. Not easy.
A question from Jay up in the Bay City, Saginaw area.
Yes, Jay.
He asks, how do you tell the difference between having your own authority and letting ego convince you of things?
Don't believe your thoughts. Don't disbelieve your thoughts. Don't stop your thoughts because they're wrong. Don't fluff up your thoughts because they're correct and you're getting somewhere. And don't shut down on your thoughts or turn away or turn to anything that will take you away from awareness of the thought patterns, like, well, the extreme example would be drugs. But you could also just watch, binge watch Game of Thrones. I know that's what I would do. So ignoring. And it's not about not ignoring. It's not about not being aggressive. It's not about it's not about any of that. It's about being aware of it. And then if you're aware of it, it's very much like the glomeruli in the kidneys. The spreading of the awareness seems to have a kind of intelligence that works with that where it's at, so that things get done. Cars don't run into each other in New York because they're driverless. There's no longer an ego mind that's trying to get somewhere and trying to cut other people off in traffic that need to be stopped by a light so other people can come by and go through. So awareness, awareness, awareness. And it's hard to do that because when we sit down to practice awareness practice, what we run into quite often is, I don't like to do this. This is boring. Or this is too hard. Or I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. That's quite often what happens with people. I seem to be getting worse. And when I hear that, I go, worse? Getting worse? I mean, I might do that, not do that to my student, because then I think I'm becoming gleeful or that I'm sadistic. And I love to see them suffer. No, what I mean is, because I know that's what you have to go through. You have to go through your own passage, negative passages. You have them yourself and they're yours. In order to train the mind, you're going to have to look at your own negativity without stopping it, without justifying it, and without turning away. Those are the three. I like it, I don't like it, who cares? Those are the three. You could do that in your everyday life, just post-meditation, when you're not just wandering around doing your job or shopping or whatever. Watch the way positive, negative, and neutral. Watch the way passion, grasping, aggression, pushing away, and ignorance show up. Just identify them. You don't have to get rid of them. I wouldn't say get rid of anything, because then that's another layer of warfare or ignorance, to try to get rid of something. There are forms of meditation that are train people to actually shut out their awareness so they'll feel more like a good meditator. And I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm not taking anybody's meditation teacher instruction training pulse. Does that make sense? Who was it that said, does that make sense or not? Oh, don't say. Yes.
A question from Sheldon down in Union City.
Yes, Sheldon.
He asks, if we get our own authority, will we know it? And does it happen all at once?
So getting your own authority just means the path quality of studying it is to see what authority is, or get your own authority. See if you can get your own authority without being self-centered or biased or opinionated, however you want to say it, to get some authority. But what you eventually see, that's the path quality, that's the learning part. But the discovery that you see is that, and you see it at the same time you see there is no solid self called me, that there really is no authority. There's no central authority for anything. And at the same time you see that, you might also see that there's also not an authority for that. It's called not to, non-dual, not to. There's no, you can't find a position anywhere that accepts, rejects, or turns away. Reference points are overrated. Or?
Just does it happen all at once?
Yes and no. Probably not.
Two questions from Shane out in California.
Shane.
How do you be genuine in an absolute sense, or in fundamental truth?
See the way that is very, very difficult to do. Look at the delusion first. As has been said, those who are deluded about the nature of realization or sanity, I like to say. Those who are confused about the nature of sanity, are mistaken about what that is, those are called sentient beings or human beings. And those who are clear about the nature of confusion or delusion or insanity are Buddhas, awakened ones. The Buddha did not awaken to really nice stuff. The Buddha awoke to intense suffering and craziness and delusion everywhere, and he saw it everywhere. She saw it everywhere, and didn't accept it, reject it, or look away. And what happened then is everything became without separation. It's called compassion. And it's not a feeling, and it's not something you can do. You can practice being kind, sometimes called compassion. You can practice not creating harm or difficulty, sometimes called compassion. Sometimes turning away might be called compassion. But actual compassion is not a function that comes and goes. It is something that doesn't have a relative context to it. Unless it does, and then back to square one again. Bailey.
When the path quality of trying to get our own authority turns into seeing that there is no authority, does that appear like giving up of authority?
No. It's more like not doing anything, but realizing that authority is a concept that doesn't apply to what you're looking at. That it's a lower level understanding. It's like a 10th grader understanding of what you're seeing as a nuclear physicist. Extreme examples. It's a low level understanding. That's why you see so many people join the military. Sometimes we wonder, why would somebody go in, as I did when I was 18, joined the Marine Corps? Why did I do that? Because I didn't know what else to do. So I did. I went in and I was quite disappointed and quite concerned that I had made a big mistake for 4 years of my life. But that situation all runs on authority, and there's some kind of a payoff of being part. It's the illusion of being part of a whole. It's called esprit de corps, or the spirit of a unit. So some kind of, this is why these young men and women go to places and fight until the death, and fight, and they won't just say, this is nuts, I'm not going to kill any more people, I'm coming back, taking this uniform off, lock me up. You know why? Spirit of a unit. Brothers, sisters, protecting their friends. That's why they keep doing it. Because if they functioned out of awareness, they would see that this is not a good idea to kill people and to have any kind of a military at all.
When you say trust yourself or trust your own mind, but then you say don't believe your thoughts.
Yes.
What is it that you're encouraging us to trust?
Trust the space in which the thoughts occur. But first you have to see that there's a space. Most people, as I say, live in a broom closet. Their thoughts, there's no space around their thoughts. Thoughts arise and they come and they go. There's a good thought, a bad thought. I feel good, I feel bad. Now I'm feeling a little bit better. Now it's a little bit worse. But there's no space around it. It's kind of almost an invisible claustrophobia. So when I say trust your thoughts, I'm saying, or when I say don't believe your thoughts, but trust yourself, I'm saying trust who you are fundamentally, which is like space. Who you are fundamentally, your spirit, your Buddha nature is like space. Who you actually are, if your body, mind died tomorrow, we might all be disappointed that you're gone, but you wouldn't. That's not a pun. Did you get that? I said you wouldn't be. What a smarty pants. So fundamentally, you wouldn't be disappointed either, because there wouldn't be any gain or loss situation going on there. But you can't destroy what has not been created. Only what's created, the body mind, is going down. Who you actually are doesn't have a time on it. You've been here, if you want to use relative terms, forever. You'll always be here. There isn't anywhere to go but here. Falling apart, nothing to do. Realize it, and your work is over. You may continue to live, you may not. Further questions? Lisa.
Ultimately, is there anything to get?
Probably not. I mean, ultimately, you're saying ultimately, so you kind of trap me with that "you" word. Ultimately. Now, if you said relatively, is there something to get? Yeah, all kinds of stuff to get. Relatively. New car. Money. So you could say no, there isn't, but on the other hand, that's such a relative thing we're talking about. I don't know how helpful it is to contemplate that part of it. There's nothing really to get. It's too early. First, we should bring our awareness to the way we keep wanting stuff, the desire part of it, the craving, wanting things to be different than they are. However things are, we want something else. Ever so slightly. It's always just a slight, everything's okay, I'm feeling pretty good, my health is okay, just had supper, feel okay, but it's too hot. Or if the temperature's just right, then then there might be sometimes a dynamic arises that doesn't have any justification. Sometimes we call that depression. We don't know why, we don't have a why, we don't have a reason, but we're feeling sad or depressed. Further questions? We have a few minutes here if any of you have questions. Now's your big chance. You're going to regret this. You're going to leave and you think, oh, I should have asked him about that one thing. I'm not charging anything today. Go to a psychiatrist and pay $150 and then what do they tell you?
Take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning.
Yes, that'll be $250, $300. And not saying you couldn't get help from a therapist or a psychiatrist or anybody. Of course you could. So not taking anything away from those professions. Yes?
How can we begin to look at our relationship to authority?
I think it would be different for each person. I think you, as a meditator, which you are, I would think that you would just take that concept and see the way in which you're kind of buying into some people are right and some people aren't. That you actually have a preconception about that and examining the preconception. So actually bringing your mind towards the concept of authority and to see if you can see the way in which you just give that some credibility. You think some people, I'm not saying you, but there's probably some kind of dynamic going on, like with your boss. You know, some kind of a dynamic is going on there that creates some kind of tension or pressure that could be examined with awareness practice. And the awareness practice doesn't, I'm not saying that you suddenly become aware that you're wrong or that they're right or buy into some polarization of it. That's how I would say. Rather than think about it, just contemplate it. Look at the concept, see what it points at. And then watch whatever kinds of stories come up around it. And then look at the space in which they occur. If you can see the space. You can't actually see space. That's why they call it space.
If we notice more tension in one situation of authority than another, is it more beneficial to bring a lot of awareness into that situation?
I think so. I think I follow you. There's some, like the way authority operates in here is quite a bit different than it would operate if you were in a job. I'm not saying there isn't some authority, of course there is. But it operates differently. More?
Would it be beneficial to compare or contrast those situations, so work and this situation?
Sure, yeah, you could. And anyone else could come up with your own version of the same thing that Bailey's talking about. You could look at how you write it down if you need to. Write it on a piece of paper, authority, and come up with your own definition based on how you've been working with that. Rather than you could also look in the dictionary, but to look at what is that? What does that word entail? What is going on in your mind and in other people, and then by extension on into the world about that, how there is, just like someone wears a police uniform, they're an authority. And some places they don't even seem to be people that'll even help you anymore. It's a little bit fearful to even ask them for anything. They're so tied up in their idea, yes.
On the spiritual path, if you've asked someone to be your teacher and they tell you to do something or not do something, is it wrong to go against what they say?
I don't think there's the right or wrong is a misunderstanding of the whole thing. The authority is there from the point of view of them telling you something, saying don't, like Kobun came to this country and his teacher, what was his teacher's name? Hozan Koe said, as far as we know, I mean, it's kind of rumored that don't go. But Kobun had a connection with Suzuki Roshi that so it looks like it was just more powerful. It's just a way of talking about it. We don't know exactly what happened. It's possible we could look at that and say, well, maybe Kobun just said, well, he might have even told his teacher, I just need to go there and let me go there and check it out, see what's happening. I feel really drawn to that. And so he might have come and just met Suzuki Roshi and said, I can't leave. I can't leave this. I have to stay here. So he was functioning out of his understanding. He was basically trusting himself. It might not have felt like it at the time. Knowing Kobun, he probably was somewhat miserable over disappointing his teacher. But I was thinking he also knew that he had to do what he had to do based on how it looked to him. So, but I don't think he was operating out of a right and wrong thing. I think it was just, I have to do this. Sometimes we know when something comes up that we have to do it. Quite often there's something we have to do, and when our best friend, our mom, our dad, our mate or something says, what are you going to do that for? And you say, I don't know, but I have to do it. That kind of thing tends to show up more and more. Just like people, just like with me becoming a monk, I had to do it. I don't have any idea why. I don't have a justification for it. And that happens quite often with other people who decide to enter the spiritual path in by way of receiving vows. Not something you can figure out. Shows up totally differently. Yes.
Another question from Jay.
Yes.
He asks, how do you have your own authority when people in relative power try to control you?
Well, what I'm saying is have your own authority. I'm not saying that you actually have it. I'm saying you see there is no authority. So you have to work on trying to get your own authority, which means looking at the nature of authority. So let's go back to square one. Look at what authority is, and then you see people in power try to control you. Well, sure, we live in a huge menagerie of wild and crazy societies, people. I mean, it's incredibly full of wonderful, kind people, and people who are quite disturbed and want to lay that disturbance on you and then solve it by pushing you around or whatever. And so I would say just do it through as much awareness as possible. If you are working in your intellect and trying to argue or fight or disagree or agree or any of this kind of rationalizing or justifying or using logic on others, that's not gonna. It's just because you'll meet people who are way more intelligent than you are. Well, maybe not Jay. Pretty hard to find somebody smarter than Jay. But you'll find people that just are able to think more clearly. Most of the people I meet are quite a few steps above me in intelligence. But I just spent way more than half my life training the awareness, not training my thinking process. So therefore I see pretty clear. That's one of my bragging points. So I'm operating out of that. So I never know what I'm going to do next. I sometimes say if you see that there is no authority, you won't make any more decisions, because you're not doing this anymore. You're doing what? You're seeing everything, and then what needs to be done next is obvious to you. You just find yourself doing it. Someone else may see you doing that, and you say, why are you doing that? Well, I don't know. And it's not like you don't know. It's not like you don't know how to put what you understand there into concepts, because you don't think with concepts anymore. Any other questions before we close? Wonderful. Thank you so much for your attention.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of your red chant books. I'd also like to remind everybody that this Saturday is the last Saturday of the month, and we'll be having our all-day. So if you're interested in that, please join us. And also we have donation boxes in the hallway. You can always use your support.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho-san shi shiru, shi-songu sa moko sa moko ja-uro-mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who's unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.